Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 29th Sedona International Film Festival. I'm your host, Carol Kahn. We are coming to you live from Yavapai College, and we'd like to thank our presenting sponsor, Northern Arizona Healthcare, along with our other sponsors, Golden Sign Gallery, BMO Bank, the City of Sedona, and the Kling family, Foundation family. And joining me now is, please introduce yourself.
Sure. My name's Chuck Schultz, and my film is When My Sleeping Dragon Woke.
Awesome, and tell us a little bit about your film.
Okay, our film follows veteran actor Sharon Washington as she decides to write a play about her childhood of living in a New York City public library, where her father was the custodian, and they had a coal furnace, and they had to stoke it 24/7. So Sharon and her family lived on the third floor.
Of the library?
Yes.
Is that a true story?
That's a true story, yes.
Oh, my goodness. Have you been to the library?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
That's
we
fascinating.
we actually were able, they let us get into the old apartment on the third floor, which is now the HVAC system for the library. So the heat and the cooling is upstairs, and the apartment's no longer there.
Oh, I didn't even know they had apartments in there.
The Carnegie libraries, actually, Andrew Carnegie's libraries, they were built, I think, 1880s to 1920s, and they all had a apartment in them so that custodians could stoke the coal furnace.
Oh, wow. How old is the New York Museum? Do you know that?
The
Library?
New York
library.
Public Library,
Yes.
I think, I'm going to guess, but St. Agnes, I think, is like the kind of late 1880s, that branch of the New York Public Library, which is on 80th, between 81st and 82nd and Amsterdam Avenue.
Wow.
444 Amsterdam Avenue, actually.
How do you remember the address?
Well, Sharon kind of starts her play off with that, so I've listened to it many times, actually.
How did you even come up with the idea to do this particular film?
Okay, well, in 1993, a friend introduced me to Sharon Washington, and he said she had a story that she was struggling to tell, and he thought maybe I could help her tell it. I didn't know anything about Sharon's background, and I had just finished a documentary, so my mind was somewhere else. And so, let's see, what would that be, 1993? So in 2014, I was married to Sharon. I got my second chance to help her, and I made a film about her writing When My Feeding the Dragon, which is actually her play.
Oh, my goodness.
So I had a second chance, and I did it because the theater is a very restricted audience. Sharon's story is universal, and film was an opportunity for me to help her get it out to Sharon's African American. There's a whole audience that, populations that don't go to the theater. It's just too expensive. So it was an opportunity to help get the word out, not only in the States, but around the world if we can.
Now, was it love at first sight?
No. No, it wasn't. She told me I had 3 months. Usually I stop seeing people after 3 months. So I passed the test.
There you go. Well, I'm glad you did, so you can tell the story. So we do have a clip of the film, so let's take a look at it.
Once upon a time, there was a little girl who lived in a library.
My father was the custodian at a New York public library,
And his job was to stoke the coal furnace 24/7. Because of that, our family lived in an apartment inside the library. Through the years, the reaction has always been, well, you have to tell people that story. But I don't do that. I'm an actor. That's what I do.
We teach writing to children as a hobby, but until you actually sit down and do it, you don't know how difficult it is.
What is the story?
Writing is the most personal that any artist can do. You'll go to places that you think that you put behind you.
Every time I tried to write this fairy tale, it was clear there's a story underneath this story. And this other story was really the story that wanted to be told. I didn't know who this man was. I knew who Daddy was. She never called it depression. She would say she was having a bad day. Pressure. There's too much pressure, so much pressure. What is the end of this story? I was naive going into this process. I was not prepared for the cost, for putting myself back into that place I was as that child all those years ago. It's going back to that scared little girl place and sitting in that place and trying to remember that, because you're going to write that and try to tell that.
Wow. How long ago was that she found out about her past, or that it came to fruition?
She was a young girl. She was probably, I don't know, 8, 9 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So, her father was a wonderful guy. I met him in like 1996, 97, and he had been, he stopped drinking. They moved to South Carolina, where he was from. He was from Charleston, but they were living in Georgetown, he and his wife, Connie. And actually, Connie had passed away before I came into the picture. And George was a great guy, but he would get lost when she was a child for, weeks on end.
Mm-hmm.
So, and not often, but enough.
When was the time that she realized like all this kind of was happening and that she was able to deal with it? Because typically as a child, when you find out about this stuff, sometimes it's buried, if you will, or not dealt with. So at what age did she finally deal with it?
Well, in our film, it's when Daddy's not there to start the fire, and Mommy has to wake her up, and they have to go down and have to start the fire themselves.
Oh, wow.
So at a relatively, I think Connie, her mother, she basically kept it away from Sharon for as long as she possibly could. But there was, at a certain point, it was impossible.
Mm-hmm.
So she was young.
Right. And now your wife, she does theater.
She's been an actor. Theater since she got out of Yale School of Drama in, I think, 1988-ish.
Mm-hmm.
So, Sharon went to the Dalton School, which is a major private school, Dartmouth, and then she went to Yale School of Drama. So she had quite an education, and she was one of those young black students that affirmative action actually changed her life,
Wow.
basically.
So when you guys got married,
Yeah.
right, and then I'm sure you knew about her life to some extent, but when you did this particular film, were there things that came out more about her life that you learned about?
Sharon's a pretty confident person, and so I think she was naive going into this, and so was I. And in Pittsburgh, which at City Theaters, where her play Feeding the Dragon was premiered, there was a stretch a couple of weeks before the opening that she wound up having an anxiety attack, and she thought it was worse than that, was in the hospital for like a day, and was begging to get out of performing the
Wow.
play. So, but shortly after that, the ending came to her. And the difficulty with the ending was she could tell stories about her mother, her father, her Uncle Gene, who was a painter who taught her about art. But when it came to herself, that was the most difficult part for her. She couldn't remember the lines. So to get to the point, they built a big book, like a fairy tale book. And they said, you can bring that on stage and just read it if you have to. And once she got on stage, she was fine. It was getting to the stage to perform it that was the difficult part for her. Because just how much can you really tell every night about dealing with a family member with addiction?
Right.
And there were things that she thought she dealt with years ago, but she really hadn't.
And how is she now?
She's all right. No, she's great. She's great. She's, I think it actually made her a better actor. I think it's actually, right now Sharon is co-writing a Broadway musical called New York, New York, that is written by John Kander, who wrote Chicago Cabaret, and Susan Stroman, who's a Tony winner 5 times over. So she's moved on, and she never would have thought she was going to be writing a musical, but it just turned out that way.
Awesome. And how could people find out more about this particular film?
You could go to our website, which is whenmysleepingdragonwoke.com, and you can find out how you can get in touch with us. We hope to have not only a theatrical release, but an educational release for like universities. I mean, Sharon's story, I think, and her journey to go from an actor to a playwright. Now the show was a solo show, so she was up there by herself, doing like 20 characters. So I think someone made a comment yesterday. We had a screening yesterday that they felt it was something that every theater department should have, and I believe that's one of the reasons why I made the film was that very reason, that I thought to get inside the process is not if I didn't make the film, I don't believe she would have let anybody make it. So
Wow. Do you think it'll be a book?
she's ready to write the children's book. Actually,
Yeah.
in 2010, there was an article in the New York Times about her and her father in the library. And so she immediately got a children's book agent, but she wanted to tell the other side of a fairy tale has 2 sides, right? Mm-hmm. There's a flip side, and everybody wanted just the fairy tale, the little girl who lived in the library, but she had this other story that dealt with addiction, but forgiveness and and redemption. And now she's ready to write the children's book. She actually has, I think the contract's almost, signed, but there's a book coming out. The licensing has begun. So
Awesome. I could see a children's book, so I'm glad she's going to be doing that.
I can see a bunch of them actually.
Well, I don't know. It seems like it's a dynamic duo between the two of you. So
We support each other quite well, actually.
that's awesome. And when is your film being shown again?
Tomorrow at 10 o'clock at the Mary.
Mary D. Fisher?
Yes, at the Mary D. Fisher. Yes.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for bringing the film here in Sedona. And I can't wait to see the book. And you'll have to come back. And
Right, and maybe you can go see the show in New York if you're in New York City.
Yes, that would be
Because it's opening in
wonderful.
April. Is opening in the next April. April 26th. It opens
On Broadway.
Hmm.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, it's
Awesome.
happening.
All right, it's happening. And then the children's book,
That's
maybe.
right.
She's got a full plate.
She does.
I'm not sure I could keep up with her. I got a lot going on, but I don't think I could keep up with her. Well, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure meeting you, Chuck. Thank you so much for
Sure.
being here. And please make sure that you follow us, hashtag SIFF23 and Sedona Film Fest 23. We'll be back with more from the Sedona International Film Festival after this.